Good morning, everybody. Welcome. So we'll begin with Refuge and then we'll do the Apramanas, singing them 3 times. We go for refuge to all the Buddhas so that all sentient beings may realize Buddhahood. We go for refuge to all the Buddhas so that all sentient beings may realize Buddhahood. We go for refuge to all the Buddhas so that all sentient beings may realize Buddhahood. May I and all beings be happy, have the causes of happiness. May I and all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May I and all beings have the happiness of complete awakening that will never diminish nor fail. Thus may we abide in boundless equanimity, unruffled by attachment and aversion, and with equal love for all beings. May I and all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. May I and all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May I and all beings have the happiness of complete awakening that will never diminish nor fail. Thus may we abide in boundless equanimity, unruffled by attachment and aversion, and with equal love for all beings. May I and all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. May I and all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May I and all beings have the happiness of complete awakening that will never diminish nor fail. Thus may we abide in boundless equanimity, unruffled by attachment and aversion, and with equal love for all beings. So the topic for today is Lojong. So I've given talk on this Metta Sutta about all-pervading, boundless love for all beings equally, and letting go of all views, all attachment to views, wrong views that prevent us realizing our true nature. And that's what we're talking about. And I give a talk on Apramanas, which we just were reciting, the 4 immeasurables or the 4 Brahma Viharas. And that's spelling out sort of in more detail. The practice develops in more detail. What does it, like to include everything in that vision of all-pervading love and compassion. Sort of that means happiness, wishing every being happy, And that then sensitizes us to their suffering and what's causing the suffering, wishing them freedom from suffering. And then that sensitizes us again to, well, what is real freedom from suffering is the realization of our true nature, which is ultimate awakening. So then that's the giving up of all views. And then that again then sensitizes us to what that would actually be like if all beings were freed from their suffering. They'd all be enjoying being with each other without attachment and aversion. Just total joy, the joy of complete awakening. And on the path we recognize that these are 4 different areas that we can work on. Work on the first one about just recognizing what's happiness and what causes happiness and wishing ourselves and others happiness. And then moving on to dealing with all the suffering in our lives and wishing beings free from that, ourselves and others free from that, and recognizing what causes that. So then that becomes another exercise in recognizing what causes suffering really, which is our grasping at views, especially our wrong views about self. So then when we wish ourselves, all beings at awakening, we want them to awaken to that. So we have to awaken ourselves first. How can we help others awaken if we haven't awakened ourselves first? So that intensifies our wish to awaken in order to benefit all beings, and then to extend that equally to all beings, which we might be able to start with, we might be able to include a few others, and then gradually realize actually the power of the Bodhichitta, the awakened heart, is all-pervading and therefore can help all beings equally always. That's actually true and possible, which we don't really realize until we've realized awakening. So you can see how all the different elements of the path are needed really in order to realize what we have in the Metta Sutta, all-pervading love and kindness for all beings. So Lojong develops it further. It's all the same points, but maybe develop the methods a bit more. And in particular, the word law is another word for mind, an attitude of mind, or chitta can be used for that as well. But this training particularly emphasizes changing the way you think. So even before we have any kind of deep realization of anything, we can recognize how we're thinking and change it. Just by wanting to change it, we can change it. And then as we change our thinking, then that opens us up to other possibilities, deeper understanding. And then the understanding connects us directly to our true nature. So the thinking, in a way, frames the mandala of our practice, really. We have to first think ourselves into practicing, don't we? We already want happiness, but we haven't really thought about it deeply enough. So we have to really think more deeply. Happiness isn't just about getting what I want here and now. It's a quality of mind or experience that you discover within yourself, and therefore I have to create this situation in which I will discover that. So that takes thinking. And so it goes on. So although you could say, well, ultimate reality, our true nature, awakened heart is beyond all thought, so I'll just go straight there. That's thinking, isn't it? I'll go straight there. the chances of that strategy working, not high. You know, you're going to have to go by steps. So you think along, change thinking as you go along, and then gradually you can let go of that need for any further thinking or reflection. You can just go straight there. That's the aim. But if you just think, I'm not going to do any thinking, I'm just going to go straight there, that's a big thinking. It's a very strong thought, isn't it? You're just thinking that. But how are you going to do it? Something's got to happen to kind of get you there. So that kind of thinking that gets you there, you could call reflection. You reflect on your understanding, and you double check on your understanding and have another look. So Lord Zhongwa is to train or train. It actually means to train or to train your thinking in a positive way. So there's a particular text that in the Tibetan tradition, there's a number of texts that deal with Lojong, but the one that's particularly used is a text called the 7 Points of Mind Training. So the 7 points were taught by a teacher, and then the texts that we use and the notes that we use are from one of his disciples, Chekawa, yes, and then we've got a commentary on those notes by Jamgon Kongtrul Rinpoche that we use, and Trungpa Rinpoche used that text to explain the 7 points. He brought in his particular style of teaching that he was developing as he was teaching Westerners, so it's kind of very interesting from that point of view. And then Pema Chodron has written, she picked that up and ran with it and has written given a lot of talks on this that have been transcribed and made into books. And this is like a very central practice for her, and she's taught a lot on it, with her own particular emphasis again, which I think is very helpful for Westerners. For many Westerners, this is really a way in. She emphasises a lot. So some comments that Trungpa Rinpoche made about being gentle and kind to yourself. He actually said, I was reading in his commentary, Lojong is gentle in intention, but harsh in practice, which we will come to see perhaps what he might have meant by that, because the intention is to be kind, to be gentle to yourself, but actually the actual teachings are very down on yourself, very down on your own selfish attachment to yourself. Just kind of drop it, give it up, and do everything that it doesn't like. So if you want happiness, then take on suffering. Turn towards suffering and really accept it, and then give out happiness. Don't try to grasp it for yourself. Just give it out. Just take on suffering and give out happiness. It's just a bit harsh, isn't it? It seems a bit harsh. So it's interesting to kind of look a bit more at what's going on there, and a lot of the slogans. If you're suffering, well, it's your own fault because you're grasping at self. I mean, that sounds pretty harsh, doesn't it? And yet it is very gentle and very kind, really, because we don't have to grasp onto ourself in that way. It's a wrong view of self that we're grasping anyway. So you can afford to be harsh on that wrong view, because if you let it go, actually your true nature is kind to yourself and all beings. So let it out, let it come out. So the last time I spoke in this series, I was talking about Tonglen, I think, wasn't I? Which is one of the aspects of the 7 points of mind training, and I think I mentioned that at the time. So the actual points of mind training is the first one is the preliminaries, which I'll come back to in a moment, but they're kind of in the preliminaries, it takes so much as given, let's say, assumes that you have done a lot of work already. Then the actual practice, which is developing the 2 bodhicittas, which is a big discussion in itself. Like there is the bodhicitta, which is our true nature of love and compassion, which is ungraspable and empty in nature. So in order to relate to that, you have to have done a lot of meditation, had a lot of pointing out instructions, have a very deep understanding of emptiness, and the Shentong view of Buddha nature. So that's your ultimate bodhicitta. So that already assumes a lot, doesn't it? And then the relative bodhicitta is more like how you practice that in your life, how you carry that out in your life. And it's sometimes expressed in terms of within a session and between sessions. So this term relative bodhicitta sort of slides about a bit. At some point I'll try and gather all the different versions together in one place. But it also relates to the way bodhicitta is used. Bodhicitta or bodhicittutpada, giving rise to bodhicitta. Typically a teacher will say to the students as they sit to receive a Dharma teaching, give rise to bodhicitta, which is your wish to deliver all sentient beings throughout time and space to ultimate enlightenment of freedom from the sufferings of samsara, complete nirvana, and in fact the state of Buddhahood, which is then ever active, working for the benefit of beings. So that means that there has to be that quality of insight into emptiness. We're aspiring to that, and we're aspiring also to have this love and compassion for all beings, all-pervading love and compassion for all beings. So that's it's a metta sutta, really, isn't it? This is what we're aspiring to, and that's why we're listening to the Dharma, because we want to deepen our understanding and experience and realization of that ultimate bodhicitta. So that actual formulation of the aspiration to bring all beings to enlightenment is also called bodhicitta. It's a mindset, an attitude of mind. You could say it's your motive for coming to the teachings and practicing Dharma. And it's also used for realizing bodhicitta. So when you truly give rise to bodhicitta is when you realize emptiness and you realize actually this isn't just wishful thinking, it's actually possible, because you can actually understand and see directly that it is possible to benefit all beings in that way. And then when you meditate on the non-dual, non-conceptual reality of ultimate bodhicitta, or as Trungpa Rinpoche says, you flash on it, which I always find that assumes a lot. Just flash on ultimate bodhicitta and then, wow, it's kind of, there's a whole process required before one can be sure that's what one's doing, but I suppose you can have a a sense of it, a sense that there is something ultimate about this practice, and then start practicing in a more thinking kind of way, not exactly an analytical thinking, but using thought, recognizing the way you're thinking and changing the way you're thinking, which is then the relative bodhicitta. That can then be practiced on different levels depending on what level of practice you're at. So then the third point then is carrying on this teaching of the relative bodhicitta, how you can transform everything in your life, all the adverse conditions in your life, into Dharma practice. So this is something we all recognize, isn't it? That we're tempted to say, oh, I can't practice Dharma because everything's going wrong and I haven't got time and I haven't got, I'm too ill, or I've got too many difficulties, or there's too much suffering, too much anxiety. There's all sorts of things that you can think of prevent you from meditating or practicing Dharma. You can't get to the teachings for various reasons. So there's a great deal of build-up of I'm getting obstacles, I'm getting obstructions, I can't do it, I'm stuck. So this is for working with that, all of that, and finding ways of actually recognizing the negative thinking that's involved in that and just changing it into something else very directly. And so the fourth point is very close, in the same sense that you can apply these teachings to everything in your life, in the way you live and in the way you die, so that good and bad, whatever arises, you can use it for your Dharma practice, as I said, in your life and at death. So that's pretty comprehensive. And then the fifth point, which it's the measure of our success. So if we can practice in a certain way, then that shows that we're doing well. So it's got some quite surprising verses in that it could sound like more advice about how to transform your thinking, or you could think of them as being signs of success. It's not so clear when you're told to practice something whether that's a sign of success if you can do it. And if you can't do it, then that is also success, because you can use that as your practice as well. So, but this is a turn of phrase that comes up a lot in the Tibetan commentaries, the measure of your success. How you can tell that you've been successful in your practice. It's a standard turn of phrase. And then the sixth one, again, very similar. The kind of advice is very similar. It's our samaya with the practice, our commitment to the practice. That okay, we've made this lojong practice is our bodhicitta practice that we're completely committed to, and we're not going to give it up. Whatever comes up, whatever negativity comes up, whatever problems come up, we're never going to give up this practice. So that's advice about that. And then the last point, it's called guidelines, but again, it seems to be another collection of these one-liners of advice. I think it's kind of like parting advice, like just a few final words gathered together there. And so these points are presented as I said, one-liners, quite memorable, short sayings or phrases, and that you can remember. So as you're reading these aphorisms or phrases or mottos even, you can remember them. I think motto is quite a good word for it, isn't it? As a Girl Guide, I think our motto was be prepared. So that was quite good, be prepared. And you remembered that, for everything, be prepared. It was actually to help others. Be prepared, be alert, be prepared to help others. Have your first aid kit with you. You know, have your bit of string and your guide knife and your stuff and your. So that was a good motto. We could have that. I could keep that, couldn't I? So yeah, you can have a different motto every day, or you could have a motto and that was you found particularly relevant to your situation that you could keep reminding yourself of. So it's a very helpful list of sayings that could be good reminders for you that you could then also reflect on sometimes. So that's your 7 points of mind training, your Lojong practice. So if you go back to the preliminaries part, that already contains everything really, because it starts with the Guru Yoga, which you often hear said, well, the whole of Dharma is just Guru Yoga. It's just recognizing, you know, the teacher is the Buddha is awakened, the Buddha is Bodhichitta, is emanating love and compassion, is dissolving the sufferings of beings as much as is possible, and that it's up to us to turn towards the power of the blessing and adhisthana of the Buddhas, and as we open to it, its power will actually work on us, and we'll end up becoming one with the Buddha, because that's our nature anyway. So the whole idea of Guru Yoga is very much the whole of the path. But there's a visualization you can do, and it relates to your human teachers and how you think of them and serve them and so on. So there's a lot to consider there, which I've written about that in my book on Guru Principle, which has just been sent to Shambhala for publishing. And then it talks about the 4 thoughts that turn your mind against samsara, which that's not every Westerner who comes into Buddhism is looking for a world view as radical as that in the Living the Awakened Heart program, I put all this kind of thinking under the heading Vasta Vision, that believing in past and future lives, believing that all beings have been our parents in past lives, and that actually we take birth again and again because of our grasping at the wrong view of self, implies that we believe in past lives and future lives. So, and then this life in which we can practice Dharma is very difficult to come by. Well, if you only think this is the only life you've got, that's not so impelling. But if you realize you're trapped in endless lives, it becomes very impelling that this life we have an opportunity to practice. We're not going to waste the opportunity. So it's very galvanizing, and this idea that just looking for happiness and the causes of happiness could in itself be a trap if you didn't realize that what's the real cause of suffering is this grasping at the wrong, false view of self. If you didn't realize that, you might actually find happiness and teach happiness and establish states of happiness, which actually in the end also collapsed because they were based on a wrong first assumption about the nature of self. So these 4 thoughts like to galvanize us to really listen carefully to the teaching, to avoid any kind of trap that might keep us stuck in samsara. And then when you've established that, then there's the refuge. You take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the mandala of awakening, all the teachers and the Buddha and all those who've realized what the Buddha's realized, and the teachings that bring that to us. So again, it's got quite a vast vision there with the refuge. And that's the basis then for Bodhichitta, for the motivation to attain Buddhahood for the sake of all beings. So it's all Vasta Vision stuff, really, isn't it? Luckily, we don't need to start there. I think Tibetans assume that you would have to start there or you wouldn't be motivated. But I think Westerners are proof that we can start somewhere else and we can gradually get to the point where that vast vision starts to be something that's even interesting, let alone convincing. So in Jamgon Kongtrul's commentary, it's assumed that we have that vaster vision, whereas I think when Trungpa Rinpoche is speaking, he's not assuming that, and certainly when Pema Chodron's writing, she doesn't assume that. So I find that very interesting. As somebody who's trying to bring the Dharma into the West, how it can be introduced by stealth, or how it can be helpful even for people who haven't got the whole picture, as it were. Even to say, may I attain Buddhahood for the ultimate benefit of all beings, to bring all beings to awakening, it's already assuming that we accept this, that would require the right view, that we'd have to have the right view of self or not self, and emptiness, we'd have to have that. And then it also assumes that we've got some conviction that we have the power to bring every being to enlightenment, past, present, and future, every being. So that's a view that probably we haven't got, or at least we might aspire to it, but can't really see how that's possible. It also implies that we have some real sense of what ultimate awakening and ultimate reality is. But at the same time, to have a motive to want to help people anyway. Because that's more accessible, isn't it? The idea of being able to help everyone, I think oh, yes, that really touches something in myself. I would really like to be able to help everyone. I would really be able to like everybody so that nobody had to ever suffer again. So we've already got that, haven't we? Which is actually the essence of the Bodhichitta. That is our Buddha nature. We hate it that others are suffering. I mean, we hate to suffer ourselves and we hate other people to suffer. And if we see and we're with other people who are suffering, we suffer whether we like it or not. So that's really direct and doesn't require a vaster vision or taking on board a different view of reality. It's just already there. And even the sense of that love and compassion could be all-pervading. Somehow, it seems to be quite a natural move. I mean, when people talk about God as all-pervading love and compassion, you don't need to. You can somehow sense something about that feels true, and it is true. But how do we get there from our normal idea of poor little me, locked in all my problems and troubles, and poor, deprived, and hopeless, helpless, useless me? How does that relate to all-pervading compassion? It's exactly the same move as I remember as a child. I'm the terrible sinner, and yet God is all-pervading love and compassion. So how do I get in there? How does this nasty me get in there if God is all-pervading love and compassion? And that puzzled me. I mean, how can I exist in such a reality as God? And then there's St. John's Gospel where it talks about, you are in God and God is in you. And it must be like that, because otherwise God would be limited by this little lump of me. He couldn't be all-pervading and all-powerful because there's me as well. So I think there's something very intuitive, deeply intuitive there, that regardless of what worldview we have, there's some meaning to that. So that's even before we even start on the actual practice of the relative part of bodhicitta and of lojong, of changing the way we think. It's based on, quite a powerful inspiration, isn't it? And on something that's actually already in us. Something very immediate in what makes our life meaningful, what's important to us in our lives. So then I was thinking about these 7 points, and I was thinking about how much is implied even in the preliminaries about the kind of training that we've had, and then about the kind of training that we give to our students in the Awakened Heart Sangha. We call the whole training Living the Awakened Heart, and it starts with simple meditation practice, which of course that's the necessary foundation for any of this practice. We have to look directly at our own experience. That's what the meditation is about. We're rushing around thinking this, thinking that. We don't stop. We don't stop and just look. What am I actually experiencing right now? It's called formless practice because you're just sitting in practice with your experience, and you're just noticing what's happening, and you're not grasping onto it to the best that you can, not grasp it, not follow it. Just let it be as it is, just so that you know it. And you find that you're knowing all your habitual patterns. They keep displaying themselves, and then you keep bringing your attention back to the formless practice, the out breath, letting go. And then the habitual pattern reestablishes itself. You get lost, you come back. Establishes itself, you get lost, you come back. So this really, really important basis for coming to understand anything about Dharma. You have to slow down, at least for a short time each day, if not all day, every day, for a long time, to really familiarize yourself with what's going on in order to practice any of this training, really. And then together with the formless practice, we have the Discovering the Heart of Buddhism. So they're designed to come together, that as you're doing the formless practice, you're reflecting on and considering the different points that are brought up in Discovering the Heart of Buddhism and recognizing them in your experience. So we sit down to meditate, and we tend to think we're sitting down to look at our mind. I know that's what I did. I thought, okay, I've come to look at my mind. Then you kind of look again, what do you mean by mind? What do you mean by heart? What do you mean by space? And we have a lot of intuitions that we might have for a moment and then drop. So the Discovering the Heart of Buddhism is helping to direct us to seeing the significance of those things that we already know. We already know something about mind. We already know something about heart. We already know something about space. Our word mind, something comes into the mind. So it already has a sense of space to it. But have we ever really stopped for very long to examine what in our experience that is, how important it is, how significant it is, whether we're really honouring that? So that takes us straight into that part of the preliminaries about just bodhicitta, the ultimate bodhicitta, our ultimate nature. What is it? And it's something to do with the heart, because heart has more sense of a being in it than mind, doesn't it? Mind could be just operations of like a computer or something that does things in the head or the brain. But heart has a sense of what we truly are. So it's all preliminary really for the Lojong practice, to kind of get in touch with your own experience, your own way that you're using words, what words trigger for you in terms of experience. And then you're looking at the heart wish, what you're wishing for. Why have you even come here? Why are you even listening to this? Why are you even trying to meditate? Why are you living at all? Why are you doing anything? There's something there that's quite fundamental to your being, which it could be happiness, it could be peace, it could be truth. Something what's real, some real sense of uncertainty and unhappiness about not knowing. So whatever it is, it's coming from before you're even thinking about it. And then that relates directly to ultimate bodhicitta, and then trying to clarify that to yourself, what that really is, and then have confidence in it. Like, can you trust that? You can't trust everything that's impermanent and changing. If you grasp onto that, you just suffer. But can you trust this, that's in the real, true nature of your being? And that is really when you're linking into ultimate bodhicitta. Can you really trust that? Can you really live by that? Can you really keep coming back to that and applying that in the way you make your decisions in life? This is all linking the ultimate bodhicitta with the relative bodhicitta, the way you decide what to do. Like what makes you decide to do what you do in the day? Is it because you're anxious and sort of all uptight or trying to protect yourself? Or are you deciding to do it because even if I were to die next minute, I would not be sorry that this is what I was doing with my time, with my life? Like you're completely integrated with what you're doing. You're really doing what you believe in, and you're doing it in the best way that you can in order to fulfill and be true to yourself. But this is your real self, not your, uptight, closed in, sort of protective, defensive, or even controlling self. This is something much deeper. And then we look at that in more detail as openness. In the meditation, you're opening out, you're letting go, you're allowing something in. And that includes suffering. It includes everything that you don't want to be there. So when you're not being kind to yourself, you're telling yourself you should be better than this, and that part of myself which isn't like that is I'm trying to push it away or get away from it. So you're dividing yourself all the time. You're at war with yourself all the time, and that's not a good basis for really recognizing and seeing your true nature. So there's this sense that there's a lot of space. Our nature is open and spacious. It can take in all this negativity, all this self-clinging, this anxiety, this depression, this anger, this jealousy, this pride. It can accommodate it all because it's vast, it's space. It doesn't have. You can't be overwhelmed by any of it. So then that allows for some more confidence and courage. You can see the different aspects feed into each other. You can open your heart more. You can be more embarrassed. You can allow yourself to be more embarrassed. You can recognize, oh, I do that too. Like you're getting really annoyed with someone, then you recognize, oh, that's what I do. In fact, it's what I'm doing. I'm angry with them for judging me. What am I doing? I'm judging them. We're reflecting each other to each other all the time. So spaciousness and openness allows honesty, actually, because it gives you courage. You recognize, I can accommodate it all. So, bring it on. So for those of you who do the Tonglen, you recognize, oh, that's why you take it on. That's why taking it on is gentle and kind to yourself. because you have this openness. I'm not sure if you can really do it if you haven't really understood openness or the non-graspable, spacious quality of what you're being. And then the clarity aspect is the vision. Okay, clarity is awareness, and we think of awareness as being aware in the moment and being awake and clear. But it's also about vision, isn't it? We know where we're going. We know what we're aiming for. So this is again fits in with the bodhicitta. It gives you the ultimate vision of where you're going. You're never going to run out of a sense of where you're going, because whenever you see beings suffering, you're going to go towards that suffering and do whatever you can to relieve it. That's your vision. That's why you're going to get up out of bed in the morning. You're going to look to see where there's beings that need help. I'm going to help them. I'm going to help them, bring them to the ultimate happiness. I'm going to be doing this forever. This is my direction. This is my vision. This is what I am. So again, it's not like I've stamped on myself. I'm really who I really am. But it isn't graspable. It doesn't need protecting. It doesn't need to defend its territory. It can be ultimately completely generous. That's all it needs to do. Just needs to give and just needs to keep coming back to that, giving and coming back to that, giving, coming back to that. That's your vision. That's who you are. That's your intention. Your whole mandala, your whole world is shaped by that intention. And nothing can defeat that, because there'll always be beings that need your help, who will be suffering. So, it won't ever be at a loss. That's sort of, you could just relax into that bodhicitta and train yourself to come back to that ever more quickly, ever more effectively, ever more deeply. So that's the clarity aspect that we look at in the discovering the heart of Buddhism. To discover, actually, we do have that quality. We do have that vision, that clarity. We are clear about who we are. We're clear about our body, speech, and mind. We know who we are. We are, and then we come to that section on the mandala principle, which brings a lot of ideas together in a single word, which I think we're finding increasingly useful. So you could say world, like we talk about our world, don't we? And when we say our world, we know what we mean. It's like, from our perspective, our experience from our own perspective, isn't it, really? It's our mandala. And if we have a perspective that's based on really a lot of fear, like, I'm in danger of being annihilated, then we create a mandala that is all protective and quite difficult to, it hasn't got much movement in it. It's like, it's not porous. It's trying to hold us in, protect us, keep us safe. Or it might go into the other mode of, okay, to keep myself safe, I'm going to have to fight off all the dangers. So then that's kind of around that tightness of trying to protect yourself is this really feisty trying to fight off any kind of threat, whether imagined or whether it's any kind of threat from yourself or from others or the world. So there's mandala principle is a kind of clarity about noticing that there is this structure within our experience of something at the center and then a boundary around that we're protecting. So we have habitual patterns that are based on a wrong idea of self. So we're clinging on to that wrong idea of self and trying to protect it. And it's very vulnerable because, a little bit of criticism and it feels obliterated. I mean, it's a poor little thing. But actually, you don't need to base your mandala on such a wrong view. you could actually switch it to, actually, that's not what I am. Linking into your wish to bring happiness to others and not caring about this one. It doesn't, I don't care about it. Okay, let it cry. Let it feel unhappy. Let it feel blamed and judged and annihilated. It doesn't matter, because actually I'm bigger than that. I can be the source of happiness and giving to all beings, and that's what I'm going to do. And if you then go back and look at this poor little one that you've just neglected, and you look at it closely enough, it's dissolved anyway. It wasn't anything. So it's not like, oh, I'm having to hold this to one side as I heroically go forward as this great heroine who's going to save everyone. Actually, when I look carefully at the pathetic little me, it wasn't anything anyway. So it dissolves naturally. So in the Tonglen and the Lojong, you're taking that as a given, and whenever it says, destroying that self-clinging, it's destroying that ego mandala based on delusion. Just destroy it. Don't have any mercy for it, because it can't be harmed. It doesn't exist. It isn't anything. So this is where Rinpoche says it's quite harsh. It's quite harsh on that one, because it's not real. But of course it has to go hand in hand with realizing it's not real. Otherwise you'd go into, the martyr. Oh, it doesn't matter about me, it doesn't matter me, I'm just thinking about everyone else. I'm not thinking about me. But in fact, getting quite uptight. That would be not such a good move. I can think of worse. So it isn't like that. It isn't like being a martyr. It's just like laughing at yourself. Like you see yourself trying to hang on and realizing you're trying to hang on to nothing. There's nothing there to hang on to. And that feeling, oh, I've got to hang on. You actually start to laugh at it, because it's so pathetic, and yet so the same as everybody else. You look at other people and what they're going through, and you recognize it. And the good thing about your having that experience is that you then understand the others who have that experience, which you wouldn't have understood if you hadn't have been so silly yourself. So it's good to notice how silly you are. It's good to be embarrassed about how you are. And then to really have the courage to turn towards it. And even if you don't actually see straight through it, just change the way you think, as if you had seen through it. And then the power of that, because that is your true nature, this giving and generous and courageous is your true nature, that will help you to see that that other one wasn't you anyway. It wasn't anything anyway. So that changing the thinking brings you in line with reality. So hopefully you can see now how the discovering the heart of Buddhism and the formless meditation practice feeds in to the Lojong, and the Lojong feeds into it, that they could work together, the one helping the other, the one being the other in a way. And it leads ultimately, the mandala principle leads ultimately to understanding what is the body, speech and mind of the Buddha. Because you're not trying to negate the mandala, your personal mandala, you're trying to realize that it is actually none other than the Bodhichitta. It is no other than the Buddha working in the world to benefit others. And always was, which is very weird. So that kind of links you into how it relates to, how this Lojong really relates to discovering the heart of Buddhism. It also relates to all the areas of the living awakened heart. So that's DHB, discovering the heart of Buddhism, our Buddha nature, being kind to ourselves, being gentle with ourselves, in order to really experience ourselves. I've talked about how it relates to I've done that bit about how it relates to all the DHB areas, but now how does it relate to the next stage of the Living the Awakened Heart program, which is the 6 areas. So the 6 areas are love and compassion, emptiness or insight, daily life practice, the 3rd one, vaster vision is the 4th one, pranidhanas is the 5th one, and you could say ritual and connections is the 6th one. And when you look at the text and Jamgon Kongtrul's commentary on the text about the preliminary practices, you can see that the whole of the 7 branches, the 7 points of mind training, are based on an understanding of those 6 areas. So that the more you understand those 6 areas, the more you'll understand what the mind training is getting at. And the more you understand the mind training is getting at, you'll understand why those 6 areas are important. So they're so if you take the first of the 6 areas is love and compassion. So it's very clear how mind training relates to love and compassion. It seems like automatically you would associate it with developing love and compassion. But of course it includes a lot more. It includes the vaster vision. And it starts off in the preliminaries assuming the understanding of emptiness in the ultimate bodhicitta, and assuming that vision of samsara and the cause of samsara, which is suffering, and the cause of suffering being the clinging to self, and the need for that motivation to bring all beings to awakening. All of that's sort of assumed as a background to the 7 points of mind training, even though one can start simply at the love and compassion part of it, which I find interesting. I mean, that's clearly what Pema Chodron's doing. She's spiral learning, come in very strongly with learn to be kind to yourself, because if you're not being kind to yourself, you're not really looking at your experience properly, and you're not going to be able to be kind to others, because you're starting from this very tight, closed-in, emotionally blocked place. So to break that up before you even try to kind of go into anything deeper, you've got, as I said, you've got your initial wanting love and compassion, wanting happiness, wanting a greater meaning and vision. That's already there. But it doesn't have to be that you've done the preliminaries in a particular way before you can start making use of these teachings. But certainly the understanding of what Lojong is about changes as you realize emptiness, and you recognize how subtle that grasping itself is, and how entrenched those habits, even when you've realized even when you've realized emptiness, even so those habits still come up very strongly, and you can develop a strength of mind by being able to meet them as they come up, to meet them with the clarity of that view just in the moment. So it can be used to enhance even the realization of somebody who's got quite a deep understanding of emptiness. Then when it comes to daily life practice, I kind of separate that off from ritual practice, because in the West, because rituals are based on the vaster vision, whereas we have we do things that look like rituals, but we just like them because psychologically they are nice things to do. We don't really have the conviction that we're really, like we might make offerings on the shrine in our daily life. It's a ritual in a way, but we might not believe in it. We might just think it's a nice thing to do. It's aesthetically pleasing. I like doing it. It's nice. It's sort of nice. I like the idea of it. We don't actually think that the Buddhas are aware that that's what we're doing, which would be more the ritual way of doing it. We might not even believe there's any blessing or adhisthana coming to us as we do it, but still we do it. So, and then it can become an empty ritual, don't we? We talk about empty rituals. I'm not interested in empty rituals. So some people might not want to practice any kind of ritual in their daily life. They want to just apply the Dharma in their daily life. Very keen on the idea of leading a moral life, avoiding harming others and helping others, practicing the six paramitas. So these kind of teachings and applying them in our daily life, like being more aware of our body, speech and mind, these kind of practices don't require a vaster vision. They don't require a changing in our worldview. They're already things that we want to apply in our life. And the Lojong teachings, of course, are all about how to apply, how to meet with the changing circumstances of life in a positive way. So that fits very well with the way we think about how we want to practice Dharma. So then the vaster vision comes in if you're going to start entering into that path to enlightenment. And I notice many Westerners, they're kind of not interested in enlightenment. They're just interested in how they can apply Dharma in their daily life. And they get a little bit misled, I think, by the high teachings in Mahamudra and Mahā'ati about how that's it. You don't need to do anything. Any kind of effort is actually ambition and has to be given up. And then people feel, so why would you do all these elaborate practices? Why would you think in terms of stages and paths and different, karma, cause and effect in past and future lives? You don't need any of that. And in a sense, you wouldn't need it if you didn't have so many wrong views. But even to think, well, it's all about this life, there's only this life. I don't want any belief. But you've already got a belief. You've already got this belief there's one life. So you're going to have all sorts of problems with that belief. Like, what is it? What is a human life? Where does it begin? Where does it end? How are you going to see the different moral problems that are facing our society if you haven't got an overall view? So it is still thinking. It's almost like thinking in order to avoid thinking, to think, well, there's only this life. That's just a way of holding a thought that will kind of release you from the responsibility of thinking about thinking anymore. So I see there's a big switch that if you can actually think to yourself, I don't actually know any of these things. I don't know what a person is. I don't know what I am. I don't know what it means to even be alive or to be in the world. So I'm wide open to waking up to more truth about that. And if it turns out that actually I can't find anything that was ever born, so why would I think it had a beginning? So why wouldn't there be other worlds and other lives? So you can start open up, and if you can start opening out to that, you can start opening out to what the Bodhichitta is really about, which is we are connected to all beings. That is our nature, and we won't be happy until they're all happy. So okay, Bodhichitta is no big deal. You're stuck with it. So it enables you then to make the next step, which is the pranidhanas. You can make a wish, or may all beings be happy, may I always work for the benefit of all beings, may this that is happening to me benefit all other beings. Those wishes and intentions and pranidhanas have the power within them to fulfill themselves. They're not just empty words, they're not just wishful thinking. They have a power within themselves to actually bring about a result. And that's a big leap for us, I think, as Westerners. We hadn't really realised that's what we were saying. But if that's true, it could be that when we do a ritual, we are actually changing the universe. Sort of when we bow to the shrine, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they are aware that we've done that. They're aware that we're taking refuge. They're aware that we're giving rise to this motivation to realize enlightenment, and they can get in there. They're just waiting for us to open, for them to get in there to help us. And it's actually happening as we do the ritual. It's not just, I like doing that. Or, I get a good feeling when I do that, or it helps my understanding when I do that. Well, it does help your understanding when you do that, but largely because it's in line with reality, and you're tuning in with the adhisthana, or the love and compassion of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So it all comes much more alive once you've got some handle on the vasta vision, and then you can start understanding why rituals, just repeating rituals, might actually be a powerful thing to do. But obviously that's all those areas are feeding into each other, aren't they? And you get that in the Lojong every now and then. It just brings in various rituals as if one has already understood that ritual's important and one's doing rituals, like the Poa ritual, or the at the beginning it talks about the 7 branches of prayer ritual. It talks about the Guru Yoga ritual. It talks about what can I think of? It talks about other rituals as well. Rituals to protectors, making offerings to protectors. It just assumes a framework of a ritual framework that probably is not. For a lot of Westerners, they might never ever pick up on that very much. But that doesn't mean that they're not linking into the whole Lojong process or mandala. It's just that some bits come into focus quicker than others, depending on where you're coming from. So as I often say, like for Tibetans, and I think maybe in the East in general, there's a general assumption that awakening, love, and Buddhas are about love and compassion more than anything. That's what wisdom means, love and compassion. It's all about love and compassion. So they feel very happy and comfortable and relaxed, especially Indians in front of holy people. They just relax and behave like children because they feel loved. Tibetans aren't quite like that, but they still have that quite a strong sense of being in the presence of the Guru is all that they need, really. And that is the ritual. And then, the teacher does some ritual or other, and they feel they're really included in, they're being drawn to awakening simply by being present. And you could even say, so you can see that they would then be really up for the vast vision and the pranidhanas, and then in their daily life they would see the rituals as part of their daily life practice automatically. And they might be much slower on feeling confident that they've got any ability to understand emptiness. So a lot in Buddhist countries, you find a lot of people would never think to learn to meditate or to try to understand emptiness or not self. I noticed that among Tibetans. Some Tibetans, I don't know anything about that. That's very deep. You go and talk to somebody who knows. Whereas as Westerners, you can have a Twitter group or, the Facebook group talking about the deepest understanding of Ati as if, I think it means this, I think it means that. that's because we're Westerners, that's what we do. But all of us have from the very beginning that love and compassion in common. I mean, you do get some rather intellectual Buddhists who perhaps don't twig that it's all about love and compassion, but yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have a Tibetan who didn't think it was all about love and compassion. Guru Yoga is all about love and compassion. Everything is about love and compassion. Bodhichitta. So I hope that's given you a sort of sense of how to approach these Lojong teachings and how they do relate to the training in the Awakened Heart Sangha and how they feed into each other. And yeah. Probably as much as I need to say today. If I look at my notes, I'll find more things. Maybe that's enough. We dedicate this punya to the enlightenment of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings realize complete and perfect awakening. May the heart's awareness awaken in the unawakened. Where it has begun to stir, may it never fade, and may it awaken fully. Chanchab Samni Rinpoche Macha Panam Jejejik Jabanyamba Mapadang Kone Kondu Pelwasho Chanchab Samni Rinpoche Macha Panam Jejejik Jabanyamba Mapadang Kone Kondu Pelwasho Chanchu Samni Rinpoche Macha Panam Jejejik Jabanyamba Mapadang Kone Kondu Pelwasho.